And the first one is personal self-development. Who are we as persons? We all play different roles. So at one time we are a child, we are a parent, we are a sibling, we are a colleague, we are a friend, we are a church member, we are a missionary, we are a neighbor, we are a leader, we are a follower. All of that at one time. And each one of those roles take time and effort. And not every role needs equal amounts of time, but every role needs appropriate amounts of time to function. But some roles can take an inordinate amount of our resources such that other roles are suppressed. So for example, in the ministry can take, your role as a minister can take so much time and effort and resources that the other roles that you play can be suppressed. Now, we need to have some boundaries with our roles. We need to have boundaries with every role we play so that we can play every role appropriately. In the US, because of the focus on the individuality of a person, if a pastor told a church member saying, I would love for you to come this evening to go visit the hospital and pray for some of our patients, some of our believers who are in the hospital. And if that person says, actually I have to take my child to basketball practice, that would be seen as an appropriate response because they are caring for themselves. Now, I'm not saying that's right or wrong. I'm just showing one side of the story. Now, if that same thing were done, let's say, for example, in India, if a person gave the excuse, I want to take my son for, basketball practice, the expectation would be, I know your son has basketball practice, but you need to sacrifice that and come and do the ministry. Now, I'm not saying that is right or wrong. I'm just showing you the other side of the story. Now, both of them are different extremes where we let the ministry overtake the role of a parent. On the other side, we take the role of the parent, overtake the role of the ministry. And so we ask, which is the right approach? Well, let's look at what Jesus did. Turn your Bibles to Mark chapter 6. Mark chapter 6 and verses 30 to 34. Mark chapter 6, 30 to 34. And let me read it for us. The apostles returned to Jesus and told him all that they had done and taught. And he said to them, "Come away by yourselves to a desolate place and rest a while." For many were coming and going, and they had no leisure even to eat. And they went away in a boat to a desolate place by themselves. So far, so good. Jesus is drawing boundaries, and they are going to take a rest. Verse 33, now many saw them going and recognized them, and they ran there on foot from all the towns and got there ahead of them. When he went to shore, he saw a great crowd, and he had compassion on them because they were like sheep without a shepherd, and he began to teach them many things. So Jesus drew a boundary, and he wanted to get rest. And as we see, that didn't happen. So there is rest and personal roles on one side, and then there is the urgency of the ministry and compassion for people on the other side. And how do we bridge this? We need to find a balance, right? I think the way to bridge this is by drawing boundaries, but not being rigid with it. Allowing for changes to happen based on the circumstances. But we should not draw boundaries. We have got to draw boundaries with each of our roles so that we can have some semblance of sanity so that we can perform those roles. But at the same time, we can't be rigid with it to the point that we say, well, I've got to go for basketball practice and I cannot come for the ministry. So from this passage, it looks like Jesus didn't rest. But actually, there are 5 times that Jesus had that Jesus withdrew from Jewish territory into Gentile territory. We know that Jesus came for the Jews, but they rejected him. But there were 5 times, and this is one of them. So after this incident where he fed 5,000, they tried to make him king, and Jesus withdrew from Jewish territory to Israelite to Gentile territory. The second time it happened was when he healed the daughter of the Syrophoenician woman. The third time it happened, he fed 4,000 people. The fourth time it happened, he chided the disciples for their dullness. And on the way across the northern border of the Sea of Galilee, he healed a blind man. The fifth time it happened, where Jesus withdrew, was towards the end of his ministry, when he came down to the southern part, to the side of Bethany, where he raised Lazarus from the dead. And each of these withdrawals was for several months at a time. It was not just a short break, it was a major withdrawal. And the reason for that, there were a couple of reasons. One was because he was trying to avoid Herod Antipas, who was trying to get him. Another reason was because he was trying to avoid political interest groups. Like, for example, after the feeding of the 5,000, they wanted to make him king, and he didn't want any of that, so he withdrew. But one of the other major reasons why he withdrew was for rest and to teach the disciples. So Jesus did draw boundaries, and Jesus did use those boundaries, but at the same time, he was not rigid in the way that he drew the boundaries. So we have to pay attention and make time for each of the roles that we play. And each of us have different roles, and each of these roles need different amounts of time. So as adults, we don't need to spend that much time being a child. I mean, we are children, but we don't spend that much time as children like we do parenting, right? So in different seasons of our lives, parenting takes a huge chunk of our time. And then we come to another season where something else takes a huge chunk of our time. As long as we are aware of the different roles we play and the different boundaries that we need to draw and and have equal time that is proportional for each season.